That's the man from the vineyard. He saw everything.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
You know, there's a specific sound that only exists in places where a salad costs $40. A sharp, terrifying little clink of silver hitting fine china that somehow sounds louder than a scream. And that was the only noise daring to interrupt the icy silence round Victoria Sterling's table that Tuesday night. The kind of silence that sucks the air right out of the room. Victoria, the CEO of Sterling Biocorp, didn't even look up from her tablet, her face illuminated by the blue light of plummeting stock graphs, looking every bit the Iron Lady the press loved to hate, while her assistant, Elena, sat there nervously, shredding a napkin under the table, praying for the floor to open up and swallow them both. More water, Victoria commanded, not asking, just stating a requirement of the universe. And before the words had even fully left her lips, a hand appeared, steady, weathered, placing a crystal pitcher on the table with a grace that betrayed a lifetime of trying to be invisible. The waiter's Namatic said Caleb, and honestly, he looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. With eyes that held a kind of bone-deep exhaustion that coffee can't fix. The look of a man who is holding up the sky with one hand and pouring water. With the other, Elena glanced up, giving him a small, apologetic smile, the universal code for "I'm sorry my boss is a monster," and for a second, just a split second, she saw his hand tremble as he poured, not from nerves, but from something else, something physical, and as his sleeve rode up, she caught a glimpse of it, a patch of skin on his wrist that wasn't skin anymore, but a map of twisted, silvery scar tissue that looked like it had been through a war zone. It sparked a memory in the back of Elena's mind, something vague, a story Victoria's father used to tell before he passed, but the thought evaporated as Victoria slammed her tablet onto the table, the noise making everyone within a 20-foot radius jump. "Unacceptable," Victoria hissed, finally looking at Caleb, but not really seeing him, just seeing an object that was in her way. "I asked for sparkling. This is still. Take it away." She waved her hand dismissively, like she was swatting a fly. "And try to focus. I know it's a complicated menu, but surely water isn't beyond your capabilities." Caleb paused, and I want you to picture this moment because it's important. He stood there, a man in his 30s who was clearly overqualified for the abuse he was taking. And he took a breath that shuddered in his chest, his jaw tightening, so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek, but he didn't snap, he didn't throw the water. He just nodded, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "My apologies, Ms. Sterling. I'll correct that immediately." He walked away, his back straight, carrying his dignity like a fragile vase, retreating into the kitchen where the noise finally drowned out the humiliation. And the moment the swinging doors closed, he slumped against the stainless steel counter, pulling out a cracked smartphone that lit up with a picture of a little girl, maybe 7 years old, with bright blue eyes and a tube running into her nose, his daughter, Lily. There was a text message from the night nurse at St. Jude's. "She's asking for you, Caleb. Her breathing is shallow again. We need to talk about the next steps." And Caleb just closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against the cool metal, the smell of truffles and searing steak filling his lungs while he tried to calculate how many double shifts he'd need to work just to pay for the oxygen tank she used last week. Back at the table, Victoria was on a rampage, tearing into Elena, about the latest merger failure, about how the board was circling like sharks, about how nobody understood the pressure of running an empire. And then she said it, the line that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She looked at Caleb coming back with the sparkling water and sneered, "Look at him, Elena. Must be nice to have a life that simple. Clock in, pour drinks, clock out. No real responsibilities, no empires to lose, just existing." Elena felt a chill go down her spine because she had been watching Caleb, really watching him. And she saw the way he checked his phone every 30 seconds, the way he rubbed that scarred wrist when he thought no one was looking. And she knew, with an instinct she couldn't explain, that Victoria was wrong, dead wrong. So when Caleb came back to clear the appetizers, Elena decided to do something dangerous. She decided to poke the bear. "That's an interesting scar," Elena said quietly, interrupting Victoria's monologue about profit margins. Her eyes locked, on Caleb's hand as he reached for a plate. Caleb froze, instinctively pulling his sleeve down, his eyes darting to the exit like a trapped animal. Just an old accident, Mum. Kitchen burn. He lied, but the lie was thin, flimsy. That's no kitchen burn, Elena pressed, her voice trembling slightly. That looks like chemical exposure or gasoline, and at the word gasoline, Victoria stopped talking, her head snapping up, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the waiter. For the first time, really looked at him, and for a second, the air in the restaurant changed, shifted from a dining room to an interrogation room. Leave the man alone, Elena, Victoria snapped, though her eyes lingered on the scar for a second too long, a flicker of something like recognition passing through her gaze, before she buried it under layers of corporate ice. He has tables too. Serve, and we have a company to save. But Elena couldn't let it go. She excused herself to the restroom, but instead of the ladies' room, she went to the coat check and pulled out her phone, dialing the number of the private investigator Sterling. Biocorp kept on retainer for background checks on potential hires. I need a name run, she whispered, huddled in the corner. Caleb, tag says Caleb. Works at the Gilded Cage, late 30s, burn scar on the right wrist. Do it now, it's urgent. And while she waited, her heart hammering against her ribs, she thought about the story Victoria's father, the legendary founder Arthur Sterling, used to tell on his deathbed, the story of the angel of the interstate, a young man who had pulled him out of a burning wreckage 12 years ago, a boy who had ripped a car door off its hinges with adrenaline and bare hands, searing his own flesh to save a stranger, and then disappeared into the night before the ambulances arrived, leaving Arthur with a life debt he never got to repay. 5 minutes later, Elena's phone buzzed. An email that popped up nearly made her drop the device. The subject line read, Subject, Caleb Thorne, background report, and as she scrolled, the blood drained from her face, leaving her pale and shaking. Because the report didn't just confirm that Caleb was the hero from the highway. It confirmed something far, far worse. It listed his dependents: Lily Thorne, age 7. Diagnosis: end-stage pulmonary fibrosis and undercurrent status. It read, application for compassionate use of Sterling Biocorp's experimental drug ROV. Denied. And there, at the bottom of the rejection letter attached to the file, was a digital signature, impersonal, sharp, and undeniable, Victoria Sterling, CEO. Elena put a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. The horror of it crashing down on her. Victoria wasn't just being rude to the man who saved her father. She was actively, unknowingly, signing his daughter's death warrant, denying her the only drug that could save her, simply because Lily didn't fit the profitability profile for the clinical trial. Elena walked back to the table on legs that felt like jelly, finding Victoria paying the bill, complaining about the service charge while Caleb stood there, taking it, accepting the insults because he needed this tip. He needed every single dollar to keep the lights on at home. Let's go, Victoria said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. I want to be in the office by 6 a.m. We're going to crush the competition. And she breezed past Caleb without a glance, leaving him standing there with a tray of dirty dishes and a broken spirit. Wait, Elena said, stopping in the middle of the dining room, her voice loud, cracking. We can't leave. Victoria turned, annoyance flashing in her eyes. What is it now? Did you lose an earring? No, Elena said, and then she looked at Caleb. I found him, Victoria. I found the angel. Victoria froze, the nickname hitting her like a physical blow. Don't be ridiculous. My father's story was, it was years ago. The boy is gone. He's not gone. Elena walked over to Caleb, who looked terrified, backing away, clutching the tray like a shield. Show her your arm, Caleb, she demanded gently. Show her the burn. I don't know what you're talking about, Caleb stammered. Please, I just want to finish my shift. My daughter is waiting. And he turned to flee, to run back to the safety of the kitchen. But Victoria moved then, faster than she had moved in years, stepping in front of him, blocking his path, her eyes wide, searching, desperate. Let me see it, she commanded, but her voice was different now. The ice was cracking. If it's you, if you're him, Why didn't you come forward? My father left a reward, millions. You could have had anything." Caleb looked at her, and the anger finally broke through his exhaustion. The mask of the servant slipping to reveal the father underneath. "I didn't save him for money." He spat, his voice low and shaking with rage. "I did it because he was burning, and now my whole world is burning, and you." He pointed a trembling finger at her. "You're the one holding the match." Victoria recoiled, confused. What are you talking about?" "Tell her," Elena whispered, stepping up beside them. "Tell her about Lily." Caleb laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Why?" "So she can reject me to my face this time. I got the letter. Miss Sterling, not a viable candidate. Risk to stock value. My daughter is 7 years old. She loves painting and bad knock-knock jokes, and she's suffocating a little more every single day. And your company," he poked her in the chest, ignoring the gasps of the other diners, "your company owns the only thing that can help her. And you said no." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, suffocating. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator units, the breathing of the patrons, the shattering of Victoria's worldview. She looked from Caleb's scarred hand, the hand that had dragged her father from an inferno, to his eyes, which were filled with the same fire, and then to Elena, who was holding up her phone, displaying the denied application with Victoria's own signature on it. It was a perfect storm of guilt, a collision of past and present that brought the great Victoria Sterling to her knees. Physically, she stumbled back against a table, her hand flying to her mouth, her mind flashing back to the night of the accident. Her father's voice on the phone, "A boy, Victoria, with a scar like lightning. Find him." And then flashing to the stack of paperwork she had signed last week. The routine denials for high-risk patients, the faceless names she had condemned. To boost the quarterly earnings, she had killed the daughter of the man who gave her a father. I didn't know," Victoria whispered, her voice sounding small, like a child's. "It was just paperwork. It was just numbers." "She's not a number," Caleb shouted, and the tray slipped from his hand, crashing to the floor, shattering plates and glasses, a cacophony of destruction that mirrored the moment perfectly. "She's my life." Victoria stared at the broken glass, and then she looked up, and the CEO was gone. The shark was gone, replaced by something raw and terrified and fiercely determined. She grabbed Caleb's arm, not caring about the mess, not caring about the scene. "Where is she?" Victoria demanded, her grip tight. "What?" Caleb pulled back, suspicious. "Where is your daughter?" "St. Jude's, General." She was already pulling her phone out, dialing a number that only 5 people in the world had. The direct line to her chief medical officer. "St. Jude's," Caleb said, wary. "Why?" "Because," Victoria said, turning and marching toward the door, dragging a stunned Caleb and Elena with her. "We're going to fix this. I don't care about the protocols. I don't care about the stock price. We are going to fix this tonight." She kicked the door of the restaurant open, the cold night air hitting them, and shouted for her driver. "Get the car round, now, and call the helicopter. Tell them to prep the transport for a pediatric transfer to Sterling Memorial. I want Dr. Reese waiting in there in 20 minutes. Caleb stood on the sidewalk, looking at this woman who had just transformed from his tormentor into a hurricane of action. And for the first time in months, since the diagnosis, since the rejection letter, he felt his knees go weak, not from fear, but from the sudden, violent return of hope. "Get in," Victoria said, holding the door of her limousine open, looking at him with eyes that were wet with tears. "Please, Caleb, let me pay my debt." The inside of a limousine usually smells like expensive leather and indifference, but that night, tearing through the streets of New York at 90 miles an hour, it smelled like pure panic and adrenaline. Caleb sat on the edge of the seat, his hands gripping his knees so hard his knuckles were white, watching Victoria Sterling work. And let me tell you, watching a CEO of that magnitude go to war for you is a terrifying and beautiful thing. She wasn't just making calls. She was rearranging reality. "I don't care if the FDA approval is pending for Phase 3. She was shouting into her phone, her voice echoing in the quiet cabin. I am authorizing a compassionate use exemption under the Right to Try Act, and if you give me one single word about liability insurance, I will fire you and everyone in your department before I hang up this phone. Do you understand me? Get the drug out of cold storage. Now." She hung up and immediately dialed another number, her eyes meeting Caleb's, and the look in them wasn't pity. Caleb hated pity, it was ferocity. It was the look of a woman trying to outrun her own soul. "Dr. Reese, it's Victoria. You're scrubbing in. I have a 7-year-old female, end-stage pulmonary fibrosis. Oxygen status critical. We're 10 minutes out. Yes, I know it's your anniversary. Buy her a diamond. Buy her a damn island. I don't care. Just get to the hospital." Caleb watched her, stunned silence filling the gaps between her commands. "Why?" he finally choked out, his voice rough. 10 minutes ago I was a line item you deleted. Why now?" Victoria lowered the phone, and in the passing streetlights, she looked older, the veneer of the invincible executive cracking to reveal the daughter underneath. "Because 12 years ago, you didn't ask why when you pulled my father out of a burning Cadillac," she said softly. "You didn't ask for his portfolio or his stock options. You burned your hand to save a stranger. And I signed a piece of paper to save a profit margin." She looked down at her hands, manicured and trembling. "I have to balance the ledger, Caleb, or I don't think I can live with myself." The car screeched to a halt in front of St. Jude's, and before the driver could even get out, Victoria was opening the door, running in her heels toward the entrance, Caleb and Elena sprinting to keep up. They burst into the pediatric ward like a SWAT team, startling the night nurse who dropped a clipboard. "Where is Lily Thorne?" Victoria demanded. "Breathless, room 304, the nurse stammered, pointing. "But visiting hours are over, and I own the company that makes the machines keeping her alive." Victoria snapped, not breaking stride. "Visiting hours are whatever I say they are." They reached room 304, and the energy shifted instantly. Caleb stopped at the door, taking a deep breath, composing himself, putting on the brave daddy mask he wore every time he walked in. He pushed the door open, and the sight inside broke everyone's heart. Lily was tiny, frail, swallowed up by the hospital bed, a plastic mask over her face, the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator the only sound in the room. Her skin was translucent, pale blue around the lips. Caleb rushed to her side, stroking her hair. "Hey, Bug," he whispered, his voice thick with tears. "I'm here. Daddy's here." Lily's eyes fluttered open, glassy and tired. "Daddy," she wheezed, her voice barely a ghost. "You came back. Did you bring the magic potion?" It was a game they played, a fantasy that there was a magic potion that would fix her lungs. Caleb choked back a sob, unable to answer, but then Victoria stepped forward. She walked to the bedside, looking at this fragile little life, seeing the drawing of a superhero taped to the Furpola superhero with a scarred hand. "That looks suspiciously like Caleb." "He did," Victoria said, her voice shaking but clear. "He brought the potion." Lily looked at the strange lady in the expensive suit. "Who are you? Are you a princess?" Victoria laughed, a wet, jagged sound. "No, sweetie. I'm just the delivery driver. Your daddy is the hero. He fought a dragon to get the medicine, and we're going to give it to you tonight." Just then, the doors swung open and a team of doctors rushed in, led by Dr. Reese, looking disheveled but focused, carrying a silver thermal case with the Sterling Biocorp logo on it. "We're ready," he said, looking at Victoria. "But Ms. Sterling, you need to sign the liability waivers. If this goes wrong, the company could be sued into oblivion." Victoria grabbed the clipboard, didn't even read it, and signed her name with a flourish that tore the paper. "Start the infusion," she ordered. "And if anyone asks, I authorized it personally. My liability, my risk." The next 6 hours were an agony of waiting. Caleb sat in the plastic chair, holding Lily's hand, watching the clear liquid drip, drip, drip into her vein. Victoria didn't leave. She sat on the floor on the dirty hospital linoleum in her $2,000 skirt, her knees pulled to her chest, watching the monitors like a hawk. They didn't speak much. They didn't have to. The silence wasn't icy anymore. It was shared, a heavy blanket of hope and terror. Round 4 a.m. The alarms on the monitor stopped beeping their warning rhythm and settled into a steady, strong pulse. Lily's breathing, which had been a ragged struggle for months, deepened. The blue tint faded from her lips, replaced by a faint, rosy pink. Dr. Reese checked the readings and let out a long breath. Oxygen saturation is up to 94%, he whispered, sounding stunned. It's working. The fibrosis is reversing. It's a miracle. Caleb put his head down on the mattress and sobbed deep, racking sobs that shook his whole body, the release of months of holding it together. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Victoria. She wasn't crying. She looked exhausted, stripped bare, but for the first time since he met her, she looked human. "Thank you," Caleb whispered, not looking up. "Don't," Victoria said sharply. "Do not thank me for fixing a mistake I made. You saved my father. I just finally paid the bill." She stood up, brushing off her skirt. "I'll have Elena handle the transfer to a private room. All expenses are covered. For life. College, recovery, therapy, everything. You will never see a bill again, Caleb. I swear it." She turned to leave, needing to escape the raw emotion of the room, to get back to her fortress of solitude. But Caleb stood up. "Wait." Victoria stopped at the door. "You said earlier that I had no real responsibilities." Caleb said, his voice steady now. "That I just exist." Victoria flinched, the shame coloring her cheeks. "I was wrong. I was cruel." "No," Caleb said, walking over to her. "You were blind. But you see now." He held out his hand, the scarred one. "My shift starts at 5, but I think I'm going to be late." Victoria looked at the hand, the scar that saved her family, and she took it. Her grip was firm. "You're not going back to the restaurant, Caleb. I need someone in my patient advocacy department. Someone who knows what it feels like to be on the other side of the desk. Someone who will tell me no when I try to sign another rejection letter. Will you do it?" Caleb looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, breathing deep, clean air, and then back at the CEO. "I'm expensive." He cracked a small smile. "I could afford you." Victoria smiled back. A real smile this time. Epilogue 6 months later. You walk into the lobby of Sterling Biocorp now, and the atmosphere is different. It's not just cold glass and steel. There are pictures of patients on the wall, survivors. And in the boardroom, sitting right next to Victoria Sterling, is a man in a suit that fits him a little better than his waiter's uniform did. Caleb Thorne doesn't have an MBA. He doesn't have an Ivy League degree. But he has the final veto power on all compassionate use applications. That Lily is back in school, terrorizing her teachers and painting pictures of dragons. And every Tuesday night, Victoria Sterling, the Iron Lady herself, leaves the office